Hello everyone, it's Elizabeth from The Smart Stitcher. I'm really excited to introduce you to this week's tutorial as we are going to be looking at spirals and creating thread art spirals. And no matter what you sort of do with your spiral, they will always look fabulous and sort of different and amazing, even if you keep the sort of same stitching grid or template that you're using. So this tutorial is going to be showing you how to draw out your spiral and to mark out your stitches, and then in next week's tutorial we're going to be showing you how to stitch them. We're going to be using just a ruler, an ordinary compass, I've got an extra pencil just in case I need one, and a rubber or an eraser, and then I've also got some paper that I'll be using as well. So to draw our spiral we're actually only going to be using the compass and the ruler. So let's get underway. So the first thing I'm going to do is to draw a line across the center of my page. Now I'm going to be pressing with a little bit more pressure so that the camera can pick up the lines and you can see what I'm doing. When you're drafting your sort of particular spiral, you want to keep your pressure light so that you can easily rub out any of the lines that you are making. I'm then going to set my ruler along that line, and somewhere around the middle I'm going to make a couple of marks that are 1 centimetre apart. Now I find to get a spiral that is looking a little bit like this one, that I use a sort of centimetre sort of distance to start with, and I'll show you how that looks in just a moment. But of course you can use 1.5 centimetres, you can use 2.5, whatever measurement you wish to use. Obviously the sort of the wider the measurement, the bigger the spiral is going to be. So once we have made our sort of 2 marks, I'm just going to label mine A and B, and I'm going to sort of show you how this will work. So when we're looking at anything above the line, that is going to respond to point A, and anything below the line is going to come out from point B. And now you'll need to set your compass, and the first thing I do before I actually sort of set any distance is I'm just going to very, very gently press the intersection for my point A and the intersection for my point B, so that I know I've already got a hole there, and it just makes it easier to catch the compass in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my compass on point A and extend it to point B. So I'll just make sure that my compass I've just tightened it so it's not going to slip, and I just want to just do a very light line. I want my pencil line to intersect point B. And now what I'm going to do is start at point B, and I'm going to go up and round to create half a circle. And just bear in mind that as I'm doing this I'm pressing a little bit heavier so that the camera can actually pick up what we're doing. So that is my first part of my spiral. Then I'm going to bring my compass point down to point B, and I've parked it already there, and I'm going to stretch the pencil out to the end of the line that we've just finished just now. I want them to look seamless, so I'm just going to lightly check that when I drag the circle pencil round it does actually match up, and then I'm going to create sort of half circle, stopping again at that line. So I'm just sort of making mine a little bit heavier, and we're basically going to repeat that. So we alternate between A and B depending on which side of the circle the spiral we're creating. So again, on point A I'm going to extend my pencil out to where I finished my previous round, and I'm going to just realign that because I'm not 100% happy that it is where I want it to be. So again, make sure that as you're going around, the point of your compass is staying stationary. It's only the pencil that's moving. So again, now I'm going to come back to point B, and I'm going to do the bottom bit of the spiral below the line. And again, I just want to check that everything is matching up really nicely, and I stop again at the other side, go back to A and repeat. So I'm going to do just one more kind of round, and there we go, one there. And again, I've moved to B, extended the compass out so the pencil is touching the line I've just finished, and I'm going to come round again. Now you've got a couple of options here to sort of finish off. If I keep my compass set as it is, I can take the pencil round, and I can taper into my circle, which might give you a sort of, depending on what kind of finish you want, you can sort of have that sort of taper finishing in to sort of create that round shape. The other option is to keep your pencil on point A again and pull it out like we've done previously, but then take it up and round to sort of finish the spiral wherever you would like it to go. So you've kind of got perhaps a little bit more of a blunted end, or you've got the option of just sort of tapering in by not moving your compass on that previous line there. So that is our sort of basic spiral now all mapped out. So I'm a great one for templates. I find it really helpful in helping me to sort of work everything out. Now if you're a bit of a maths whiz, you'll be able to set your compass and you're kind of going to head off and just mark your stitches, but from experience I've found that as my rows get closer to the middle of my spiral, I tend to like my stitches to come a little bit closer together, just because that helps to create a sense of depth within what you're doing as well. And my little template I've got sat underneath here is just a little bit of a guide as to how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to start on this sort of bottom edge here and sort of work in based on the 6mm, 5mm, 4mm. Well, as we get a little bit closer to the center, I'm actually going to shorten the round a little bit and start overlapping with 4mm, 3mm and 2mm. So let me show you what that looks like. So in order to get my stitches looking as though there's a sort of a little bit of depth in the sort of spiral and a sort of a decrease in the shape, I want my stitches getting slightly narrower the closer to the center of the spiral we get. So I tend to work that out by sort of having a template ready, and I'm going to show you how to do this. And I start on my sort of bottom edge here, creating a stitch gap of 6mm, and then on the next layer in it goes to 5, the next layer in it goes to 4mm. Now what you'll also notice is sort of around the center here I've actually started to sort of bring in a little bit more of a closer sort of stitch distance. So we've got 4 mils going into 3 and then leading into 2. What I don't want to do is end up perforating the paper and sort of ending up with the work falling out because these stitches are too close together. So let's get marking our stitches. So I've started to sort of give an indication. We've got 6 stitches on the very outer, and that's going to go all the way around to the line that we drew at the start where it becomes 5. And now I've shortened the sort of as we approach the center, and I've just drawn a very faint pencil line across here, which is then where my stitch is going to change to 4mm apart, all the way around beyond the line to my next line here where they become 3, and then the last sort of part of that curve will become 2mm apart, and that just helps to give a sense of depth. Now if you are heading out and you're going sort of this way and up, then you may well find that you want to make the stitches on this last part of your spiral a little bit wider. So I tend to make mine 7mm apart on this sort of upper section. So whether the curve is tapering or whether the curve is actually going off to a sort of more blunted end finish, my stitches there will be 7mm apart. So in order to help me mark out my stitches, I've actually marked my millimeters across the side of my page here, so I know that I don't have to sort of worry about checking with my ruler. I've already got it marked out, and when I want to check I can just set my compass to where I think I should be, and then I can pop it. Say if I was doing 7, I can see I've actually got to stretch my compass out a little bit more there, so it just allows me to be able to sort of put in the point of the compass, and I can just check how far I need to draw my lines out, so I can then sort of do that as a ready reckoner. It can be something that you can put on a piece of card and just sort of have it like a ruler, but I find that if I had them all together it would be, and I just sort of marked sort of 7 up to 7 mils, there'd be too many little marks getting close together if I tried to do it in one block, so I've actually spaced mine out. So I'm going to start with my 6mm line, and that is going to sort of start at my line here. It's going to come all the way around to the inside and then back finishing at that particular point there. I've got my compass on 6 mils, and if you're a maths genius, this will probably be really easy and you can just fly around and mark your stitches. I find it just takes me a little bit of time because I'm putting my point on the line and I know that's going to be an intersection, and I'm just making a line. Now I'm not going to talk all the way around while I do this, so as I move my compass forward, I put my compass where I've just made a line and then I make a mark. So I'm going to just work my way around doing that. So again, give yourself a bit of time and just take your time to then mark out your stitches. You don't need a particularly heavy mark. I'm trying to sort of just go a little bit heavier so you can see and the camera can pick it up, but we are looking to mark all the way around through to back onto that particular point, almost like we've done a circle. So as I approach my line where my stitches are going to change dimensions and get a little bit narrower, I haven't quite got enough space to mark one and then sort of stop exactly on my line. So all I'm going to do is go as far as I can with the 6, and then I'm just going to swap a little bit earlier and then carry on and mark out my 5mm stitches. So I'll just ignore the line and use that as a bit of a guide, and then away we go again, marking our stitches at a 5mm distance. So the lines that I've put in just where I want my sort of stitching to change as I approach the center of my spiral, they are just there as a bit of a guide. And as I'm approaching my line to go from 5 to 4 stitches, I've actually just gone over slightly just by 1 stitch, just because that's how the stitches have fallen out. And I'll now just adjust my compass and I will carry on until my next marker doing my 4mm stitches. So as I've now finished my 4s, I'm about to start my 3, and again I'd put my guideline in and my stitches don't sort of happen to sort of go up to it, they actually straddle it. So all I've done is just take a 4mm stitch over the marker, and then I will then change to 3 and go all the way around to my marker for 2. So as I have got closer towards my middle, I have moved into doing my 2mm stitches, and they have just come that sort of last part of my spiral. And what I've also done, just because I think it gives a better finish, is I've actually taken 1 stitch over my line, so my stitch is very neatly kind of finished on the line that I drew in the very first thing we did, and then I've just gone 1 stitch over because I think when you start to sew it just gives it a much nicer effect. The last thing I'm going to do is to do my 7mm stitches on my spiral. Now I'm actually going to be tapering my end in, so I will be marking my 7 all the way around into my taper, but of course if you wanted to leave it open then you would go out on that open leg. So here we have our spiral with our stitches all marked out ready for pricking. Now depending on what type of point you've got on your compass, you might find that you don't actually need to do much more because the hole's already there. I prefer to use and go back and use my pricking vise and my embroidery needle just to sort of really clearly mark out the holes. Once you have pricked out your holes, that's also then perhaps a really good time to just rub out any of your pencil marks that you don't want. Also, when you are pricking your design out, you want to make sure that you are exactly on the intersection. Now sometimes if things do go wrong, we can do a little bit of a repair. So for example, if you realise that you've got a stitch that perhaps isn't exactly on the intersection and where you want it to be, turn it over and you can gently, with your thumbnail, with a bone folder, with the back of a spoon, just push the paper back down, make it nice and flat, and then come back again with your compass or with your pricking vise, depending on what your stage you're at, and put the hole in the right place. You might find it then quite useful to maybe just have a little bit of tape across the back to support the paper from the back, but that might be dependent on where the hole is and how close it is to other holes being pricked. Sometimes if you're very close to where you want to go, a little bit of tape on the back can just support the paper quite nicely. So I've now just taken a moment to check the back, check the front, make sure that I'm happy with all of the marks. I've also just softened the pencil lines just a little bit so that when we start stitching, they're not perhaps going to sort of be the dominant force, and I'll just take out this centre line a little bit more before we start stitching. Now when we do our spirals, I like to sort of use somewhere between sort of 3 and 4 colours, a little bit like on this one here. But again, you know, it's entirely up to you. I will be using a Gutermann sort of sew-all thread when we come to sew my example, and I'll also be using some colours that will sort of pick up easily on the camera. So until next time, where we will be sewing our spiral, which is tremendously exciting. I look forward to sharing that with you then. Bye bye.